But real quick, let's go ahead and get into our welcome. Welcome to the family. Welcome to Metro. Evie's going to cue that up right now, and we'll go through that. We just got some amazing people to welcome onto the team. So we're going to get that going. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to go ahead and move on through it and just introduce the people. So since I don't see the slides, I'm going to keep going since timing is of the essence. So we have an amazing welcome to Tony, to Archie, Lanaya, and John. Thank you so much for being a part of our family, and we're grateful to have you as a part of this family. So thank you guys. So let's turn it over now to bucket fills, to just all the good stuff that's going on right now. I want to hear about it, and I'm sure all of our colleagues want to hear about it too. So who's got to share? You guys aren't shy, so I don't know what's going on here. Come on now.
I do. This is Cal.
There you go. What's up, Cal?
Hey, what's up? I have a bucket fill, man. Getting some things done. I have an awesome teammate who let me take care of some things today. Mustafa, he's on our team with Alicia, so he allowed me to go and witness a appraisal today. So I thank him for that.
Awesome. Teamwork makes the dream work, y'all. I think we already know that, but let's keep that mentality pushing and going. Any other bucket fills or good news? Let's hear it.
Broker Bob here. I have a bucket fill for our very own Nikki Francis, who is sick at home with COVID and still working, and she's navigating through a very challenging escrow, and she's doing it exemplary with following all the guidance, but mostly making sure that she is dotting the I's and crossing the T's and CYA just in case something happens on the back end. Great job, Nikki.
Awesome. Thanks, BB and Nikki. Awesome job. Any last one? Let's do one more if we got it.
I was just going to actually shoot one out to Broker Bob and Mark Miller, who are always available to us at all. And I don't want to say all hours of the day and night, but weekends and evenings, which no other team is. And in situations like this, it could make a monster difference. So thank you guys for your guidance and your ability to support us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nikki. BB, you do a lot. I just want to shout you out real quick, show you some love. I appreciate you and everything you do for this amazing team we have. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you have to share with us a little later today on the meeting. So real quick, we're going to turn it actually over to real quick before breakthrough. I'm going too fast because I'm so excited. Okay, just bear with me. This is why I'm excited. Right after this team meeting today, guys, immediately following is my first breakthrough class. And I hope you all can make it, because this is the time and the place to break through if there ever was one. So let's get it. The same link right after the team meeting today, we're going to have that training. So please join us if you can. With all that being said, Broker Bob, let's do the growth coaching updates.
Let's shout out all the successes.
BB, I'm so sorry. I'm having some challenges sharing from my
honey, don't you worry. I got you covered, boo.
Okay, thank you.
Don't worry about it. It's all taken care
of. Thank you.
All right. Shout out to Team Alicia's in her coaching program. Eric Harris opened another escrow and closed another escrow and officially capped in growth. That means he's getting 6 months of free coaching with our very own Coach Alicia. And then Mustafa, who's in growth as well, opened up an escrow on his listing. And Paul, our very own Paul Tolentino, shaking his booty out there, got a BRE sign and opened up not one, but 2 escrows. And he's in launch. On Team Clarissa, Mindy Davis closed her first escrow. Congratulations in launch. And Carlos opened an escrow in launch, and Lee Norman got another BRE signed. Great job. And on Coach Carl, Salma closed an escrow in growth, her very first one in growth, I believe, growth coaching. And then Emmanuel set 2 appointments from cold calling in growth. Great job. And then finally, rounding out the bunch, Team Vinny, our very own Dave Caston, Monty Python, closed an escrow and launched. Great job, everybody. Back to you.
Thank you, BB, and congratulations to everybody highlighted, because I am just so proud of us, by the way, because I know, and I'm not just tooting our own horn, but I'm doing it a little bit right now. Other brokerages out there aren't getting our people moving like we are, period. So like when we're talking to our friends that are in the business and stuff like that, we have that to lean on. That's something that is not going anywhere. The dynamic that we have is so special. So thank you, coaches. Thank you, staff. You guys are awesome. So with all that being said, do we have any movement people here today? Because I know Ed couldn't make it and Amanda wasn't going to make it. Wes is on a plane. So is there any movement people here today? I don't see him. Okay. And A Plus Escrow gave us their 2 minutes as well, because they just want to make sure we get through this amazing training today and risk management. So let's go ahead and turn it over now a little bit early to Bridget Potterton for the ALC Minute. If she's here. Okay, so since we're waiting on Bridget, and if you can see her, she's not on. Okay. So let's go straight into the pitches, guys. Let's hear some property pitches. We got a few minutes to do it. So who's got some properties to pitch today? There you go. I see Amy's hand up. Go ahead, Amy.
Okay, I have one. I can't remember if I pitched this a few weeks ago or not. Gary and I have a coming soon in Claremont. It's a townhome. It's a 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath, really nicely upgraded with hardwood floors. The kitchen has the granite and the newer cabinets and all of that. The unit right next door just opened escrow today at $600,000. The main difference on that one is that that's a single level corner unit. We are a 2-story non-corner. I believe we're going to go on. We talked originally $559, but I think we're going to go on at $575. He's trying to push the price up and I'm trying to keep him down. And he's just doing a couple little handyman repair things before we go on the market. So I'm thinking we'll be on a week or two. It's on Chateau Drive. Chateau Drive, 2-bedroom, 2.5 bath townhome. I'll put my number in the contacts on the chat. So if anybody wants more info.
Thank you, Amy. Please do. Anybody else with any property pitches? And I did see Bridget jump on, so we'll jump to her after the pitches and then we'll go from there. Any more pitches? We're selling them quickly. We already knew that from Ashley's meeting. So, I mean, I guess we're not, they're flying off like hotcakes. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's give it to Bridget Potterton for the ALC Minute.
Thank you, Mike. Sorry for my technical difficulties, everybody. Gotta love Zoom. Anyway, I just wanted to announce, first of all, thank you so much. We had great attendance last week for our culture committee event, which was the St. Patrick's Day scavenger hunt and also fundraiser for our very own Alicia. And I want to give a shout out to Deborah Yatsko. She is from Old Republic Home Warranty. If you don't already have a home warranty person, you need to talk to her. She donated our prize, and we actually have 2 winners today. Our winners, the voting was so close, by the way. Thanks everybody for voting. But we ended up with 2 winners because it was so close. One for most accurate depiction of the photo, and the winner for that is Emily Holmes. And second is for the funniest one, which was a photo of that Alicia had created with her dog Bella. So we are dividing the prize into 2. There was, as you all know, Deborah announced that she was going to be giving a yacht to the winner. So yesterday I told there was a tie, and she went to divide the boat in half, and unfortunately it sank in the bay. So instead, Deborah is going to be providing a Amazon gift card to both of you. So congratulations. She's going to mail them to the office. So make sure you guys come into the office in the next week or so and grab your gift. Thank you everybody for playing, and we'll have another game soon. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bridget. And I saw all the cool stuff, all the photos. I saw Alicia's for sure with the dog. Everybody was playing ball, and it just looked like so much fun. So that just shows who we are, guys. So thank you, Bridget, for being a part of that culture and helping us really keep that rolling. So love you, appreciate you. So ladies and gentlemen, so I'm going to pass it over to my good friend and our broker here, Mr. Broker Bob, Risk Management.
Thank you very much, Mr. Delgado, and we are all looking forward to your class today. I'm sure we're all going to grow immensely from what you're going to be sharing your knowledge with everybody. And I hope a lot of people on this call will be attending that class. I know you spent some great time on it. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome. Glad to see we're up to 62 for risk management today. I'm going to start sharing my screen. We'll get right into it because I think we're going to have a really good discussion today. Appreciate you guys showing up. This is part D because we did have an earlier risk management because we move things around every now and then in March, but this is our second one. The first one was for February. What we're going to be covering today, and can everybody see that? I hope you can. Just give me a few thumbs up. Great. I always like to give you a few hot topics coming from the risk management committee at SDR that I sit on, and we're going to talk about CAR guidance on escalation clauses, and I will talk about this probably every time until we're out of this market, and I want to really review some pros and cons about some escalation clauses, how they can get you in trouble. We're going to talk again, and we're going to go over the market conditions advisory, and we're going to talk about the seller in possession and residential lease after sale. You all have seen some story about something recently. We'll cover that a little bit. And then we have an updated compliance review that you're going to be excited to hear about because it's actually good news. All right, so here's the in the know. And I said this the last time, I'm saying it again. The new RPA is coming out at the end of this year. And here's my update. It's no longer April training. They're going to kick it off in August, meaning August of this year, we're going to learn that new 16-page contract that you're so excited to learn about, because you know what, you learned the 10 pages so well, you're like, I'm looking forward to 6 more pages to go over. So be prepared for that. Put it on your calendar for August to start going through that and some training. And it will be offered virtually through SDAR. They have some classes already put up on their website if you go to their class roster, and you're going to be learning it just with me too. I'll see when we can teach it here in the office, but I don't even have it in my possession yet or what it looks like. All right. So here's something to think about. When markets are on fire, litigation always follows. Who said that? Anybody? Anybody can unmute themselves.
You?
Well, it says me, but who else? Says every broker ever. So we know as brokers, and we actually talked about this at risk management, which is why I'm so glad I have these peers that I can go speak to once a month about the stuff they deal with. And I give you guys a shout out. And here's the shout out. Our office does really well with any litigation or claims or complaints, etc., compared to some of the other franchise type offices in San Diego County. Why do I know this? Well, some brokers might not be able to be quiet about the number of grievances that they are in or claims they are in. And I shudder to think about what they're going through, because it's no fun when a broker has to go through that and clean it up and work with the agents to help get them out of trouble. But I got to say, you guys as an office are doing really, really, really well. We have had no claims since I've been broker. We've had a few things where we try to ease things over with a couple $1,000, but for the most part, you guys are doing really well, and I'm very proud of all of you. So you guys should applaud yourself for that.
Knock on wood, Robert.
Yeah, right? I might be speaking too soon. Well, I'll knock on my head because I have a hard head anyway. All right, this is a question, so whoever wants to answer this. What is the number one thing a buyer or seller will say to me as your broker if they want to sue you and the brokerage?
They never told me.
Ashley, you're not supposed to give it away. That's it. The answer is exactly what Ashley says. Your agent never told me that. And most of the stuff that you should have told them is actually in the contract documents and some of the disclosures that we're going to go through. So part of being a good agent is not only just going out and finding the house and writing the offer and getting it over there. It's really about reviewing things so that they understand what they're signing. Now, are you going to give them legal advice on what they're signing? No. But a really good standard of practice would be for every buyer or seller you work with is to say, this is the standard form that we use for purchases or listings. And by the way, this is a legally binding document, and I can give you input about what certain things mean, but I want you to understand the implications of what you're signing. And I highly recommend that you speak with an attorney about the legal ramifications of the contract you're signing. Now, whether or not they go see the attorney again, that's another story. But at least you have the fiduciary responsibility to tell them that so that they understand that they're signing a contract. And most people sometimes don't realize the gravitas behind that. So again, best message you can always say is, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, by the way, this purchase agreement is our standard purchase agreement we use in the state of California. There's a lot of stuff in here, and I'll answer as many questions as I have, but for the real legal meaning of it, I really highly recommend you speak to an attorney. Now, whether they do or not, that's another story. Remember that. Okay. So where now in this heated market can we get in trouble? Well, it's with escalation clauses, and we did talk about it previously, and we're going to go through a slide deck that CAR put out recently. Now, I asked Mark to drop in the chat box the CAR Q&A guide on escalation clauses. So I hope you all will take time to read that. But here's what CAR recently put out their slide deck, or their advice they give for escalation clauses. So I know we have some seasoned agents on this phone, but we also might have some new agents that might not know what an escalation clause. So I'm going to treat this as if everybody knows nothing. Okay. An escalation clause is a provision where a buyer offers to pay more for a property than any other prospective buyer without knowing the price offered by other buyers. For example, the purchase price shall be $1,000 than any other offer. That's also sometimes referred to as a relative bid or a sharp bid. Now, not only did I have Mark put in the CAR Quick Guide Q&A, I'm also going to have him insert the link in our Google Drive folder for the office that has kind of a definition of escalation clauses along with appraisal clauses. And I've handed that out before, and I still get asked for it. So I'm adding it again today. Somebody say something? All right, Rob Paul, can you mute yourself? Okay, when are escalation clauses used and why? Well, they're used when a buyer is looking to make their offer stand out in a multiple offer or competitive market environment. It allows the buyer to make the highest offer, but only by the minimal amount necessary to beat out other offers. Are they legal? Generally, yes, when drafted properly. Escalation clauses can be used to create a binding contract. And buyer and seller client should always be legal advice for questions. This is key. If you are writing an escalation clause to get yourself where a buyer will never be able to say to me, your agent never told me the ramifications of an escalation clause. I can come back and say, well, actually, my agent, per the email they sent you after they sent the offer, they advise you to seek legal advice. So you also not only tell them, you also memorialize it in an email after every conversation that you have with your clients. That's what's going to protect you the most. I also sit on grievance committee at SDR, and I've mentioned this before. And the number one thing that protects an agent whenever they get a grievance filed against them at SDAR is if they have their everything documented. And so you always, and that's why Mark always asks for the compliance review to have your communication log. That communication log is what's going to be the proof of how you've guided your clients in an email format. So including a cap or maximum price. So here's an example. Buyer may offer X dollars more than any other offer, but not to exceed a certain maximum price. Here's the pro on that. It limits the buyer's exposure when another buyer makes an outrageously high offer, because you're setting a certain maximum price that buyer will be able to pay. The con on that actually is it reveals the maximum price at which the buyer is willing to buy, but the seller may counter at that maximum price or use it as a leverage to get other offers. But the bottom line on that, buyers must decide if they want to include a cap, and again, should seek legal advice about potentials. Any questions on that?
I have a question, Bob. We're actually working with the buyer right now on a property that seems to be overpriced, but you never know because they're all getting over asking anyways. The buyer doesn't want to put a cap. They can actually afford, I think the listing is like $1,285,000 or something. They can actually go up to $4 million. So they don't want to put a cap and they can make up appraisal differences. Mm-hmm. So what if we don't put a cap? What's like, is that, I don't like that idea, but they don't want to give it away. Like you're saying here, that's the con, but they also don't want to lose an opportunity if they put a cap.
Well, I go with the bottom line on that, seek legal advice and get it in writing as to what they want to do, because the claim they could make against you if they're paying too much really comes after the escrow closes. And they think they pay too much, and then they have a claim against you. Well, you never told me that. Things, Amy, is you're guiding them, but I know you have a good communication log because I see it. As long as you have things memorialized in an email, that's basically covering your booty.
All right. Thank you.
Good question. So including a floor or a minimum price, buyer may offer X dollars or 1,000 higher than any other offer received, whichever is greater. Let me repeat that. Buyer may offer X dollars or 1,000 higher than any other offer received, whichever is greater. The pro is, if there's no other offers, the seller can accept the buyer's offer and create a binding contract. That's the pro. Here's the con. The buyer's floor price could be higher than the next highest offer, including the escalation amount, causing buyer to pay more than would have otherwise. So now do you see, are you guys getting the idea of why escalation clauses can kind of get you in trouble? Because it could make the buyer pay for more than they really could have if they just wrote what they wanted to pay and what the max was. And again, this is on every slide. You think there's some significance behind it. Buyer must decide if they want to include a floor and should seek legal advice about the potential consequences. Put that in every email you send them when you talk about the conversation. Now we've seen this, requiring verification of the next highest offer. Buyers should include a requirement that seller provide proof of the highest offer received with a right to contact the other buyer or their agent to confirm the offer is in fact real. While agents often uncomfortable handing over other offers without the use of a confidentiality agreement, offers themselves are not confidential and may be shared with other agents or prospective buyers. So some of the escalation clauses do. We want proof that the offer that we are beating out, that you actually got it. And it was an arm's length transaction. It wasn't a straw buyer. So in the Google Drive link that Mark put in there, we actually have that in ours actually, that it's an arm's length transaction, that it's not just a straw buyer, that came in and made a fake offer, you really want to look at that offer and, hey, do they even have a pre-approval letter attached to it? Okay.
Robert, can I say something to that, if you wouldn't mind?
Sure.
What you have to remember is that the agent's going to be calling an agent that just lost in this process. So the likelihood of that agent being kind and helpful and forthcoming might be slim to none. That's an odd way of going about it, in my opinion. Now, I can't imagine that the losing agent would be, super helpful at that point.
Yeah, no, I agree. Totally. Good point, Susan. That's why, I bring this up for you guys to know, if you put that in there, be aware that you might not get the information you're really looking for, because you might be met with some resistance. Okay. What if multiple offers include an escalation clause? Unlikely sellers can just accept one of the offers with an escalation clause to create a contract. It may be impossible to determine the purchase price. Seller would be well advised to issue multiple counter offers. Okay. So here's our risk management concerns. Buyers should always be advised to speak with their own legal counsel prior to making an offer with an escalation clause. You can copy that language. Mark actually put this on this whole slide deck on the inner office page a couple days ago, in hopes that you guys would read it. So it's there if you need this. And the other concern is brokers may adopt a policy discouraging the use of escalation clauses, or adopt a policy that agents may not draft escalation clauses, requiring the buyer to use their own attorney to draft such clauses. We've done none of those. What we've done is we've asked you to tell them to seek legal advice, and as long as you call me and if you need help crafting it, or Mark, we'll help you craft it again, but you tell the buyer you got to get some legal input on it. Okay. And there's some additional resources in there, but any questions on that? Perfect. Moving on. Mark mentioned this a couple weeks ago and made it important for people to understand the significance of this market conditions advisory. Now, this is now part of our opening documents. What does opening documents mean? Opening documents means these documents need to be signed when the buyer signs or the seller signs their purchase agreement or listing agreement. So let me rephrase that. Opening document means this needs to be signed when the buyer signs their purchase agreement or the seller signs their listing agreement. Why is that? Well, as Mark likes to say, well, the horse is already out of the barn if the buyer signed the purchase agreement and they weren't advised about the market. And it's I'm just going to read the very first paragraph. Real estate markets are cyclical and can change over time. For some of us old timers on here, I don't know, Amy, Susan, just to name a few, we've been through some markets, right, girls? And we don't have any gray hair to show for it.
Only 2 or 3.
Yeah. It's impossible to predict future market conditions with accuracy. In a competitive or hot real estate market, there are generally more buyers than sellers. This often leads to multiple buyers competing for the same property. As a result, in order to make their offers more attractive, some buyers may offer more than originally planned or eliminate certain contingencies in their offers. And then the next paragraph talks about a cooler market. So it's important to make sure your buyer reads this and understands before, especially if they're doing an escalation clause and an appraisal removal, or if they're going to make up some money. So they need to understand offering price. As a buyer, you are responsible for determining the price you want to offer for a property. Now, this is important to remember. How many times are you asked by your buyers, what should we offer? Anybody?
All the time.
A lot.
Always.
Yeah, they're looking to you for guidance. But is your guidance what they should be? I mean, yeah, you want to guide them and navigate them, but ultimately it's their determination of what they want to offer that really is the what will keep you protected from them coming back and saying, "Well, you never told me that." The less, especially like a listing, if you're taking a listing, you never pick the sell price. You give them a CMA, you have them go through the CMA, and you have them determine the selling price. You can guide them. But what happens if you pick the wrong selling price and it doesn't, it sits on the market? Whose fault is it? And you picked it. They look at you like, you picked it, I didn't. It's sitting here. Same thing. If you underprice it and then it goes for more, they're going to think, oh, we you picked the wrong price. We could have got more for this home. That's why you never want to be the person responsible for picking the price, because their claim against you can be, you told me to do this. And it goes on to say, although brokers may provide you with comparable sales, they're relying on data just like you are. So you need to feel comfortable as a buyer of the price you're offering or the price the seller is accepting or they're going to accept in a counteroffer. We'll guide you. It's ultimately your decision. What's really scaring me in brokers is all the non-contingent offers that are coming out there. Non-contingent meaning they're removing every freaking one under the sun. In some scenarios, it's a good scenario. It could be okay, maybe if it's a cash offer, an investor, and they don't really care. But even with that, there are implications behind that the could get you in trouble if you're not guiding them properly.
Robert,
So
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to speak to the MCA for just a minute, and maybe Mark or you have an opinion. In a recent listing, at the 10 offers I received, none of them included an MCA. So in the multiple counter that we sent to 4 of the 10, I wrote it in as a requirement. Now, granted, that MCA wasn't signed prior to them writing their offer, but it certainly was a requirement before they responded with their buyer counter. Does that work for you guys, incorporating the MCA as a listing agent into the buyer's side? In other words, making them, telling them they have to include an MCA, kind of like the SBSA is going to be done after we get into contract. This was saying in the multiple counter, buyer to complete a market conditions advisory. Does that work for you guys?
And you're representing the listing side, though.
Correct. But not one of the 10 offers. We're one of the few offices that includes the MCA with every offer. So this is a way to this price is going crazy high. I want to make sure that the buyer has got an MCA in place so that I have that in my back pocket in the courtroom someday.
I think as a standard of practice, you've already got your seller to sign the MCA when you sign the listing.
Correct.
So you're protected there. Anytime you can get a form added into an agreement, I think it's okay to incorporate it into the agreement to protect you. The claim would come against the seller, and then perhaps the buyer making a claim against the seller that they overpaid. But you never know what scenario is going to play out in a mediation proceeding. But I think it's okay.
That's what I was thinking too. It's an interesting point because, it doesn't need to be added and incorporated into the contract or the purchase agreement like we do. It doesn't mean that the buyer's agent didn't give them the form. It's just not part of the offer. But it does mitigate what Robert just said, that the potential for some collusion, allegation to come out in the future and say the buyer's agent and the listing agent colluded to raise the price. And so by giving them the form in a response in SMCO, not a bad idea.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
You get 2 gold stars for that one, Susan.
Oh, shucks.
And that was the original advice on escalation clauses, is that a buyer could come back against both agents and say both you and the listing agent colluded to get us to pay more for this home. So I love that within the MCA, I highlighted this. Broker recommends that buyers do not write offers, and if you do so, you are acting against the broker's advice. However, if you do write a non-contingent offer, these are some of the contractual rights you may be giving up. So why I like this in here, there's also a letter, and CAR is actually developing a form right now called Against Broker Advice Advisory. Right now, there's a letter in zip forms, and it's in the letter section, and it's an against the broker advice letter. Now, whenever I ask an agent to put that in there and give it to whoever they're working with, they hate it because it looks like we're telling you not to do this. Don't do it. Here's something in this form that you can actually maybe just highlight or say, just read section B of the MCA on non-contingent offers, and particularly take note to the last sentence. And that's kind of a softer way to deliver that it's against broker's advice, and without really giving them against broker's advice letter, which is in your face. Okay? And so some of the things are giving up: loan contingency, appraisal contingency, inspection contingency. We've seen all these. And if you are writing an offer where a buyer is willing to do that, you've got to make sure, because there's an inherent risk, as it says right here, there's an inherent risk in writing a non-contingent offer. Only you, after careful consultation and deliberation with your attorney, accountant, or financial advisor, can decide how much risk you're willing to take. It is your decision alone and cannot be made by your broker or your real estate agent. So for those of you that have been around a long time, and maybe is any of this like having light bulbs go off, or you're saying, you know what, I didn't realize that. And it's okay if you didn't. I didn't realize that, but you know, this is really good. This is where I should be using it. Amy, you were raising.
I really like this. And as I'm listening to you, especially going through the contingency, this would be a great opportunity to present this to your buyer when you're going over the BRE. Yeah. Before they even consider writing offers, because they need to know this. And I let my clients know when we're out, looking at property and such, that these are some of the things that other buyers are doing, just to make you aware of what we are up against. So I inform them of, over asking, removal of contingencies. And I just met with a buyer last week and I said, I'm not asking you to do that. I just want you to be aware that this is what your competition is. So, make sure that you understand what you're dealing with when you're writing offers. But I like to be able to present this now. I'm going to do that from now on with the BRE meeting, or whatever you call it, consultation.
You guys are doing the hardest. I think you guys as an industry are working harder than you've ever worked in your life. And we always say that during every slowdown or uptick or whatever, but I think you guys are fighting tooth and nail to get the inventory we have out there for your people and for your listings. Fighting tooth and nail to show why you can help with the listings. Seller considerations on the MCA is the very last sentence. Again, as a seller, you are responsible for determining the asking price for your property. All brokers may provide you yada, 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 right? So never give them the price. You tell them. The way I would position it, I love the triangle that we have in the seller's guide on pricing, the pricing model. I use that a lot. It's like, where do they want to position their home? Do they want the most amount of buyers to see it, the average amount, or very few? And then they determine where they want to price it.
Just let everybody know that's also in the shift book if they want to go grab it.
Thank you, Ashley. So any questions on the MCA? All right. So some of you might know this. We have an updated, or know what I'm going to talk about, but we have an updated compliance process. And I got together with Mark and the rest of our office TCs, just the office TCs. I want to hear the good, the bad, the ugly that everybody's going through right now. And I want to know what we can do to make our compliance stay compliant, yet make it more kinder and gentler approach. Maybe even offer 1,000 points of light. And if you ever lived during the George Bush era, you know what I'm talking about. The first George Bush, not the second. So we we spent an hour or so doing that, and then Mark and I came up with the compliance review messages that you get that will be more uh, easier to understand. So some of the feedback that we received was, we get this compliance review message and there's a lot of stuff in there and it freaks me out. And I appreciate all the stuff that Mark puts in there, and you guys should appreciate it as well, because our goal and his intention is to help educate and inform so that you become a better. And I truly believe our compliance process has kept us from being out of court. So we're not going to take away everything. We're only going to add, but make it easier to understand. So you all know you get an initial review. The initial review is on every purchase agreement and brand new listing that you take. Needs to be submitted to the go through the compliance process through command within 2 business days. Because we got to start looking at that, because that's your timeline. We got to figure out, okay, what needs to be added or enhanced in the transaction. So always remember that. Every time I take a listing, every time I get a purchase, I have 2 business days to put it into the start going through command so Mark can start looking at it, and Mark and his team can start looking at it. We've always had a rule that if there was a late submit, it may result in a $300 fine. Now, where this rule kicks in is if you maybe, let's say, take a purchase agreement and don't submit it until 2 days before it closes. Well, you're requiring Mark to work overtime, and Nancy and Drew and everybody else to get your file approved so you get your check on time. That's kind of where that kicks in. Okay, so here's how your review message will look. At the very top, in bold, will be required missing items, meaning of all of our required opening documents. These are also the opening documents that are required at contract consummation. So just remember, required missing items are all the stuff I should have had done when I had them sign the contract. So are we going to don't have these? No. We're just trying to remind you what you need to have for the opening documents. Now, we have that opening document checklist in the Google folder on what those forms are for a purchase and a listing agreement. And if you ever need to go to it and figure out what it is, they are all there. Again, required documents are what needs to be put in the file. Then the next section is broker recommendation. And Mark, I am so proud that Mark does this. And believe it or not, and yours truly, have made mistakes on my contracts. Lots of them. We're human error. So what Mark does is he'll go through the purchase agreement and provide recommendations on what you should do. He'll also, if you've missed something in the contract, you got to go clean it up. But they're really kind of recommendations on what you should do. Like he'll always put choose a date rather than number of days. Well, because it's easy to put 30 days, and we know that you're negotiating. You don't know when you're going to get the fully executed agreement. But you kind of want the closing date never to fall on a Friday and never to fall on a Monday. You always kind of want it to fall on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Because most lenders are not as busy as they are on a Friday and a Monday. And Lord help you if you close on an end of the month or end of a quarter. So that's why he puts that in there. You've got, when you're writing your contract, figure out, well, what is 30 days out from today? And it falls on an end of a month and end of a quarter. Well, good luck if you're trying to close on a Friday or maybe for a holiday weekend. It's stress out of your transaction. And in the very bottom are the TC's to-dos. So you have a transaction coordinator. That's Mark's note to the TC of what they need to do to get your file complete. So the only section that I really want you to worry about mainly is the required missing items. Now your TC will gather them up, but if it's something that, like the estimated buyer's cost is required at opening, well, again, as Mark says, the horse is already out of the barn. You were supposed to get that at the onset of when they signed it, and the CMA, and the additional agent acknowledgement if you are working with another agent within our brokerage. Now, then the next.
Robert?
Yes.
Can I ask a quick question about the estimated buyer cost?
Yes.
So in this time, let's say we're working with buyers. Like I have had 5 offers that I've written for buyers. My buyers don't want to see one more estimated buyer cost. It's the same damn thing almost every time. Why is it a requirement when they essentially know what they're going to be paying?
Dan, can I ask you a question? When your buyer gets a pre-approval, do they get a estimated HUD?
No, not usually.
Okay. So,
Danny, you don't need to do an EBC for each property. Just base it upon the buyer's pre-approval amount.
yeah.
That's good enough. And even if you gave them the car EBC form, it minimally it would list the items that they potentially would have to pay for, even if the amounts are not defined.
Perfect. That's helpful. Thank you.
No, not for every property you're on, but just get one. Your buyer should know. Believe it or not, I've had this happen. Buyers didn't know they had to pay closing costs, and then they get to the closing table, and it happened. Amy.
If their lender does provide something for them with an estimate, would that be sufficient to submit?
That's fine. I'd rather have it come from the lender, really. I would see if you can get an estimate from the lender. Less work on you, more on other people. Okay?
What did you say that's called? I'm sorry.
Estimated buyer's cost.
Thank you.
Here's where I've seen a challenge is with VA loans. I've had transactions where the VA buyers didn't know that they had to pay for an appraisal out of their pocket or an inspection. They just thought they didn't have to pay anything. And it's not that, for whatever happened, somewhere in the transaction, they weren't guided properly. And that's really what their excuse is. Well, you never told me that. You never told me that. Then on the final review, first section will be add these missing items when they become available. And then the final review, missing required items. So the top section is when they become available. Sometimes they're not available until the day of close, but we don't want to hold up you getting your check because escrow didn't send over the form or the verification of property condition was done at the very last day. They're still required, but we won't hold your check up for those. Where we'll hold it up is for the final review, missing required items, meaning they need to be in there to get your check. So just make sure those items are in there, and then provide all missing items to your TC for final approval. So, and then Mark, now get me if I'm right, you're going to put the narrative after at the very bottom, right? On some of the stuff you provide?
Yeah, there may be, some correction items that'll be, listed at the top. If it's a TC item that they can do, then it'll be listed in the TC to do section. For those of you that haven't ever seen this, use the missing disclosures procedure. That's something that the TCs, have, and we have developed in the event that a seller fails to give a disclosure that we require for whatever reason. We have a process by which we can then give it to the buyer so that the buyer can't say, gee, if you knew I was supposed to get it and I didn't get it from the seller, why didn't you give it to me? So we're really trying to, cover all bases as far as mitigating buyers saying, you never told me.
And then in our final last thing, and we're covering a lot today, and I'm sorry, but a lot of this is really timely. So you probably all saw this story because multiple people sent it to me. Couple buys Riverside dream home, but seller refuses to move out in eviction moratorium loophole. Thumbs up if you saw that story. Okay. This is what gives brokers no sleep at night. Reason being is during the times of COVID, there's been eviction moratoriums where a landlord cannot evict a tenant. And if that landlord can't evict the tenant because there's a moratorium and the courts are closed, once you represent a buyer where that's property, after the sale of the home, that buyer technically becomes a landlord in the state of California in the eyes of the law. And then if they need to evict that person, they have to follow what the law states. So the two documents that you put together to allow, and this is why this is all about offer consummation during this turbulent market that all these people are non-contingent offers. Seller can stay in for 30 days, no cost. We're seeing an activity where the SIP or the RLAS is not incorporated into the contract at time of contract signing. The SIP is a license. It's not a lease. It's a license that allows a seller to remain in possession 29 days or less. So if a seller is going to stay in for 14 days, then you incorporate the SIP into, and you get it signed at the same time they're signing the purchase agreement. And then the RLAS will allow a seller to stay in the property for longer than 30 days. Now, most lenders will not allow a buyer to buy a property if the landlord or the seller is going to stay in for longer than 60 days. So you have to keep that in mind. So you can't accept an offer where a seller stays in there longer than 60 days if the buyer is getting financing. So making sure you have these forms filled out at offer consummation, here's our broker guidance. So always, this is the same thing with the escalation clauses. Agents should advise the buyer or seller in writing if they have questions of a legal nature regarding a seller in possession. They should contact a real estate attorney and advise the parties that they should also consult insurance advisors whenever title and occupancy do not transfer on the same date. And then, because if a seller's remaining in possession of the property, there could be a challenge or a problem with their insurance. They have to have different insurance, not regular homeowners insurance. They might have to have a renter's insurance rider on their new insurance they're putting in place. And one of the other things would be to consider adding a per diem for every day the seller stays past the date agreed upon. That way there is a dollar amount fixed to the place if the buyer or landlord had to evict and sue for damages. You might want to use as a rule of thumb, consider applying the PITI, the principal interest taxes insurance, as the base amount for that rent. And then CAR has put this great doc, and this is also stored in the Google Drive folder. CAR has put this great website together, and it's called the COVID-19 Tenant Relief Act, and it's everything about tenants and landlords. So if you're representing a buyer, you're going to want to, and that's going to have a seller remain in possession, you're going to want to send them this link to start doing their own investigation about what it's like to be a landlord in the state of California and over eviction guidelines, etc., that they'll need to become aware of. Because if you don't do this, what will they come back to me and say if something goes bad? Amy said it. You never told me this. You never told me this. And this is where we've had multiple situations where a seller has refused to leave the property, and we don't want to end up. Now, what happened with this? Does anybody know what happened behind this? Anybody read it? Well, evidently, the agent didn't even put an RLAS in place. So good luck with that. buyer, which is now the landlord, trying to evict this tenant.
Hey, Robert, can I add one quick thing?
Yes.
I've seen some offers come in lately, and like we're talking about, buyers agents are making these offers for a seller to remain in possession. And I see they'll add it in like RPA section 6. They'll say seller can stay up to 10 days after or 30 days after close of escrow or whatever. So you're a listing agent and you know that your seller does not need to stay in possession. You have to remove that clause by counteroffer, because if you don't, you've accepted it. The seller's accepted it. And then you'll get a message from me that says add the SIP or add the RLAS. So if it's been offered, but it's not needed, counter it out.
Anything else you saw, Mark?
Pretty much it.
All right, I know we covered a lot, and I'm like, I need to get all this covered because this is the market of the moment, and the expediency of what we just went through was really important to me to cover on this time. Does anybody have any last minute questions? Anybody have any real estate horror stories?
Yeah.
Question, Broker Bob.
Yes.
I understand the benefit of using these forms, and I do use them a lot. But with the eviction moratorium, in theory, it protects us, but practically, does it actually protect our clients?
Well, what's the situation that you're thinking of, Bridget?
Let's just, like, I've got one right now that the seller's supposed to be moving out. They're renting back for a month for my clients. Let's just say the seller's, their deal falls through and they just don't move out at the end of the SIP. What really protects my new homeowners?
I think what we've been talking about lately, and it was in that last slide, is create some kind of a disincentive for that seller to stay. In other words, like you say, you can stay for 10 days, but if you're there longer than 10 days, you're going to have to pay the buyer X per day, whatever that number is. And that would be based on the buyer's actual costs, whether it's PITI or whatever. That, acts as a disincentive for the seller to remain. And in the event they do remain, it substantiates damages to the buyer that they can later claim. So consider adding that clause of a per diem after the time allowed.
And you bring up an important question, Bridget. What protects you? Nothing. If there's going to be mediation or a lawsuit, there's going to be mediation or lawsuit, but you mitigate it by following the guidance, this type of guidance. Really, you're never not going to have someone. Once an attorney gets a hold of something, and I'm sorry if there's any recovering attorneys on here, recovering attorneys will make a case out of anything just because they want to make money. That's really what
And there hasn't been a test case for this yet, so there's no precedent. So yeah, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, Leona used to say, do you always want to be the test case? Anybody else?
Broker Bob, I was
Yes.
wondering,
Yes.
you mentioned the buyer and seller checklists were in our files. I just went through them all and I'm not seeing them anywhere. Is it on our Facebook intro page?
The inner office, the Google folder.
Okay.
The
I'll
Google
look
Drive
again.
folder. Mark, did you drop that link into the chat box? Yeah.
Sure.
Again, kudos to everybody in our office because of the great amount, the amount that we don't have to spend time in court, and you're out there making more money. Because the last thing you want to do is spend time either in court or mediation, taken away from your opportunity to make more money. And you're all doing a great job, and you all follow guidance. Our goal is never to make you look wrong at risk management, but make you look like, what can I do to be the best? Because you're only rewarded by clients giving you referrals down the road because you help guide them through a sticky situation. And that's where the longevity lasts in this business. Okay. And Mark just dropped the Google Drive folder in the chat box. click on that link and bookmark it, because that has all the important stuff that we'd like to share with you that's up to the moment, okay? And someone did ask, do we have a real estate attorney to recommend? Again, if your client doesn't have one, again, it's just like recommending any service provider. You can give them recommendations, but you should always say, if you know of anybody or you know somebody that knows somebody, we highly recommend you interview them as well too, because what happens if the attorney is a horrible attorney? But make sure they talk to a real estate attorney, okay? All right, we are at the end of our rope, end of our time, and now.
That was a Freudian slip.
Yeah, totally. Back to you, Mike.
Thank you, BB. So let's give Broker Bob a high five virtually and a hand. Just give him a hand, because seriously, guys, I'll tell you this right now. In my entire real estate career, I haven't seen an organization be this just really on top of things to help you guys keep your butt out of the murky and muddy waters that we don't want to be in. So thank you, BB, for that. So guys, we're rolling in. If you want to continue on this Zoom that we have right now for my first breakthrough training. So first, since we've been sitting here for about an hour, if anybody needs to go to the restroom, let's get back here in 5. I'm going to keep it running, but let's do that.